Yo, in today's video, it's been a while. I feel like I just haven't had the energy. I've been busy. I don't know, living life. But today I want to talk about the low that comes after the high, because that is exactly what I'm feeling right now. I think no one really discusses this too much because so much of our life is chasing a high. So much of our life, we just want to feel just happiness. We are living for happiness, and we are running away from moments of low. We're running away from moments of reflection, of just sitting with your thoughts and discussing and reflecting on how something went. So for me, this past weekend, as my previous video showed, I was doing a half Ironman, and leading up to the event, it's so charged. Your head is just thinking about the one event. It's very liberating, actually. And then you're performing. You put everything you got into one day, 5 hours or so of work. Suddenly it's over. You're proud of yourself, but you're proud of yourself, and you go on this big high. You're like, holy smokes, I can just take on the world. And for your own life, this could be literally anything. It could just be good news that you got the job, that the interview went well, that the person you asked out said yes, that you had friends over and you had a great time, you hang out with a good buddy. So this all fits the mold of like the big moment of happiness, elation. And after everything's done, what happens? You come back down to reality. The thing that was making you so happy, so full, is now over. The big release, if you will. And like drugs, or I don't actually do drugs, but I've heard, and like any substances and stuff, like there is a period of time at which they can last at. So different events will have different lengths of time that make you feel very happy. And it changes for every individual as well. So for the half Ironman, for example, the past 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, the event was on Sunday. Holy smokes, like I felt so high. I felt like I could take on the world, but my body was so exhausted. But mentally, everything was just grand. Everything was just good. And I had friends over last night, and there's a huge high in that. The social energy of like a little party, a get together. And then it's just over. Like I have certainly crashed from the half Ironman now. I'm just drained. Life is back to just being normal. And the day after having friends over, I'm feeling drained because there's so much energy that goes into that night. Preparing to host, all the snacks involved, and all the prospects of just getting to talk to friends and people. So, but there's this downcome, like this downcome, this come down. And I find the come down to be so fascinating because everyone experiences it. And it's basic like thermodynamics. It's basic physics. When you have energy that moves from, like, okay, there's a couple of things I want to try out here to try to explain myself. From particle physics, you have an electron, and then there's like an anti-electron. When like an electron is made, there's also like an anti-particle that is created. When you creating a proton, there'll be an anti-proton. There's these anti-particles. There's this idea that the matter is not created or destroyed. They merely transform shape. So when you have a very high feeling that's created, there has to be a low in order to balance it out at some point in the future. It doesn't matter when per se, but it will come. And it's inevitable because from a physics standpoint, it's just how it is. When you have contrast, when you have energy that's very hot, or like heat, for instance, it flows down to cool to the surrounding temperature. So when you have it from the get-go, it will flow down. When you have a cold substance in a hot environment, the cold substance will also heat up. It will melt. And these moments of pleasure or joy, of like the half Ironman thing, it's as if you like went to the store and bought one of these very hot, or it depends upon your perspective, these very hot or maybe cold substance. Maybe you can think of it in terms of like you bought a pack of ice cubes and then you brought it with you back home. Eventually those are going to melt. But for the time being, holding on to the ice cubes and everything gave you so much joy. You created joy. But you need to rebalance that joy. The ice cubes need to melt down to the surrounding environment. Your joy needs to come back down so you can experience it again. This is the fundamental point. You need to reset your dopamine. You need to experience the lows so you can experience joy and the highs again. I literally get goosebumps from thinking about that. A lot of our world, we try to run away from the lows. That when we experience sadness, we should not feel it. But it's important to feel it. Because if you never let yourself feel sadness, if you never actually go through periods of low, you will never experience the highs again. Because let's go back to the ice cubes. It's like you buy your bag of ice. So you bought something really exciting happened. And intermittently, you're buying more smaller ice bags and trying to fill up your ice to keep it cold, to keep it alive. And it can work, but it will kind of falter eventually. You cannot sustain it for long because it's the environment that you're in that is making the change. It's inevitable to happen. So why don't you just let the inevitable happen? let the ice cubes melt so you can go buy a big bag again instead of just spending your coins on these very small bags of ice. This analogy is kind of weird maybe, but I'm just trying to paint this picture of, I'll concretize it now. When you experience something very exciting, half Ironman, or you have friends over and you socialize, or you go out partying with your buddies and you come back home, the moment you step inside, the moment you get back home, reality sets in. You're alone. The friends are not with you. You're not doing your half Ironman anymore. You are just merely existing in this world. And as a result, you whip out your phone. You try to stimulate your mind to keep the high going by watching YouTube videos, by watching Instagram Reels, by watching social media. Because you're trying to fill up your ice bag. You're trying to keep like little stims going. And you're not letting yourself crash. Like one perspective that you can say is you're not letting yourself fully rest. You're not letting yourself just come back to the baseline completely. And as a result, it's like you're floating high up and you're just going to make the inevitable crash worse. And it will happen at some point. So why not just let the crash occur when it feels like it's happening and just sit and reflect with your thoughts. Use it as an opportunity to pause. If you feel sad after a social gathering, I think that's your brain telling you that it's time to rest. It's time to go to sleep and just recharge. Because sleep and rest is when the recharging happens. It's not staying awake and trying to fight through the dip. But it is like a fundamental law of thermodynamics. The heat and energy, nothing can be created or destroyed. Energy just merely transforms, and it's analogous to the saying that there's no free lunch. You cannot expect, like in physics class, there's no free lunch, meaning, I guess the analogy is, if someone's offering free lunch, there's always a catch. They always want something from you. Maybe it's like advertising or whatnot. And that's a common saying for physics. There's just no free lunch in physics. There's no free lunch in this world. You cannot expect to get a high without expecting a low after. And I, for one, would much rather experience these natural highs than experience the artificial ones. The ones induced from drugs or substance abuse. Because you're artificially inflating your dopamine. And you're making it harder for other areas of your life to fulfill such happiness. A while ago, me and my good friend George, I remember chilling with him in the sauna, and he told me about how, I don't know how true it is, but I feel like it sounds very true. Historically speaking, when men would hear, I don't know, a woman play a piano or something, they would get such a dopamine rush from it. Because relatively speaking, like, there was nothing more exciting going on in the world. Piano was the highest level of excitement. And I mean, it doesn't even have to be like a guy listening to a woman play. It could be just going to a concert, like a piano recital, a classical, whatever. That doesn't happen in our world right now. And I think it's because we've caked over the excitement and rush that you can get from music, and social interaction even, with these other forms of dopamine highs. And when you can actually get the dopamine high, you don't need to partake in music. You don't need to talk to people, because you can artificially sustain yourself. You can artificially fill your ice cube bag with more ice. Everything is so relative. The moment that you cut out drinking soft drinks and very sweet, juices, is the moment when fruit starts to taste unbelievably amazing. Your taste buds are relative. If you starve your taste buds of such immense taste and then you go have an amazing meal, it's gonna taste like heaven. If you are in a very, very quiet environment and you hear a sound, it's going to cut through the silence like a knife. But if you're in a noisy one and you hear that same sound, it's going to be hidden amongst the noise. One from my own life as well. I have blackout curtains in my room. I've been trying to seal out the light. And the fascinating part about that is the darker you try to make the room, the more contrasting little cracks of light become. The more you're trying to chase to fill them in, and then the darker the room gets, so then the small cracks become more important and stark. All of our senses are relative. All of our perception is true. Our brain, like, only speaks in differences. And so, connecting this back to the idea of the dopamine release, for the half Ironman, you're experiencing this huge contrast of, like, joy. So of course, when you come back to your baseline, it's going to feel sad. When you go out with your friends, you experience just happiness from your friends. Of course, when you come back, you're going to feel sadness, because the brain is contrasting moments. Your brain lives on the differences. It doesn't know how to perceive, like, the lack of change. So take this with what you will. You can leverage it to your advantage to live a happier life, to know that when you feel lows, it's okay to feel lows, because you probably just had a high. It's important to sit with the low. And another thing I would add that I've been really thinking about these days is, you do want contrast in your life. you want to seek moments of joy and moments of sadness, because the moments of sadness let you feel joy and the moments of joy let you feel sadness. Because if you're living in this, because the alternative, you're living in this very narrow band of a very stable emotional state. And I actually can do that, but as I've been tapping more into just who I am and who I want to be, I've been finding that I can set an opinion and discuss what it is actually that I like in this world. And that helps me to feel like I'm actually living. Because when I say I like that, I am discovering what my own identity is, and it feels like time is actually being lived. Whereas if you live in this narrow band of stable emotional well-being, and there's no contrast, there's no high peaks of joy, like low lows, it almost feels like time is at a standstill. That time, it's just, you're not living. You don't even want to live, because every day just feels the same. One example of this is when you're watching a YouTube video and the characters acting in the screen end up just stopping like this. And you ask yourself, is the video buffering? Because your perception of the world is that there needs to be differences. However, the video wasn't buffering. The actor was just standing still. And just right there, I've kind of showcased this idea that your brain needs differences in order to feel like something's happening. And if you're not finding these differences, if you're not seeking contrast, then frankly, it'll feel like you're just not doing anything, regardless of it being a low or a high. You need the contrast. And I think if you actually lean into experiencing the lows, you're gonna experience the highs too. This is 100% guaranteed. Because another principle in all of physics is the principle of reciprocity. It means that in terms of electromagnetics, you can, well, how do I put it this way? Yeah, in electromagnetics, it's such a complex analogy. I have it so in my head, but I'll try. In electromagnetics and the research that I do, I'm working with MRI coils. An MRI coil is very simple. You put it next to a person's head. It's a loop of wire with some circuit components in it. And it collects the signal from, it's called the NMR signal, the nuclear magnetic resonance signal from inside a head. This signal is a magnetic field. So when you put the coil next to a head, you are collecting magnetic field from the head. And that's kind of one way to characterize the coil, is you can put it next to the head and see what signal it collects. Or, using the principle of reciprocity, you can take the same coil and you can inject current into it. and let the coil emit the electric field instead of it being the head, like my actual head that's emitting the field. The coil is emitting the electric or the magnetic field, and then you're measuring how far or the magnitude of that signal. This is such a convoluted analogy, but not convoluted. It's just so hard to describe. I'm gonna work on better acknowledging it or articulating it. But the concept, the principle of reciprocity just stands true. If you lean into the lows, you will only ever find highs. If you lean into the highs, you will find lows because you are contrasting with the world. When you lean and appreciate the lows, when you dig into the lows, when they're not happening, you will find the joy in living when the low is not there. But you just have to let yourself experience it. You cannot run away from the lows all the time. You need to let be, let change, let be what let be. But I've been talking for a while now. I had a lot to say. It's been a while since I made one of these. And it's very interesting, honestly. But I'm Matthew. Peace and love. I hope you have a great day.